Two men watched from the shadows of the abandoned gas station. They saw the truck stop and a tired-looking black woman down the cabin. For them, it looked like an easy target, a simple routine. They could not be more mistaken. The woman, Maya, just stretched her back, ignoring them. Their plan was to take the truck and the load and get rid of it later. One of them, the highest, smiled and said to his partner, "It will be fast. She won't even know what hit her." What he didn't know was that Maya was not an ordinary truckle. She was a former military man, specializing in melee fighting. The night was silent, except for the tinnitus distant from the highway. Maya took her bottle of water, her calm and deliberate movements. She felt her eyes on her, a feeling she learned to identify in combat zones. She didn't show. He continued his routine, checking the tires, acting as any driver would do. She did not see two predators. I saw two amateurs. The way they moved, false confidence. The way they tried to hide, but their feet dragged pebbles on their asphalt. They were noisy, sloppy, a mistake that in your old work would cost your life. This story is a reminder that true force is often hidden under a calm appearance. If you believe you should never underestimate anyone, leave your like in this video and subscribe to the channel so as not to lose the unfolding tonight. Tell us which city you are watching and comment on the word justice if you think they will have what they deserve. The two men decided it was the time. They left the shadows and started walking toward her. The highest, Rick, said first, "Hey girl, problems with the truck?" His voice was falsely helpful. Maya turned slowly, her inexpressive face. No problem." The second man, Ben, tried to circulate to be behind her. A basic and poorly executed tactical movement. She turned her body subtly, keeping them both in her field of view. They stopped, the surprise breaking their confidence for a second. Rick insisted, "I think there is a problem, yes. And the problem is that you will come with us now." They thought they had trapped her, but why didn't she look at all scared? Maya did not respond to Rick's threat. Instead, she did something they didn't expect. She stepped ahead, diminishing the distance between them. His eyes showed no panic, but a cold and methodical analysis. She looked into Rick's hands, then Ben's. Empty. No visible weapons. Another amateur mistake. They trusted too much in physical strength and intimidation. His military training shouted in his mind, his sergeant's voice, "Observe your opponent. Arrogance is a weapon they point to themselves." Rick felt a twinge of discomfort. He expected shouts, crying, supplications. Her silence was more disturbing than any resistance. "Didn't you hear what I said?" he growled, trying to recover control. "I told you to come with us." Ben, the partner, was visibly nervous. He looked from Maya to Rick, his feet moving restless. "Rick, maybe we should just get the key and leave," he murmured, his voice low. He felt something was fundamentally wrong with that situation. This is not what the victims reacted. The victims didn't look at you as if they were calculating the best way to dismantle you. "Shut up, Ben," Rick ordered without taking his eyes from Maya. He could not retreat now, not in front of his partner. It would be a sign of weakness. Maya finally spoke, the voice firm and without a shred of tremor. "I heard what you said. I just didn't understand why you think this will happen." She crossed her arms. It was not a defensive stance. It was a posture of the waiting. "Do you have a plan? Or was the idea just finding me and improvising from there because your improvisation is terrible?" Each word was a precise blow. She was no longer being threatened. She was questioning their competence. The dynamics of power was completely reversed. Years driving for dangerous roads taught her to read people, but it was the years in the army who taught her to disarm them without a single shot. She saw fear growing in Ben's eyes, and anger masking the insecurity of Rick's. He was the leader, the most dangerous, because his ego was at stake. He would not retreat, he would attack, and that's exactly what she was waiting for. The question was no longer if they would attack her, but how. And for each possibility, his mind was already drawing 3 different counterattacks. They did not corner her. They entered her trap. Maya's words hit Rick like a slap on her face. The humiliation burned in his chest, overlapping any logic. The plan was crumbling, and it was that woman who refused to be afraid. His wounded ego shouted for a violent response. "You talk too much," he growled and advanced. His movement was exactly as Maya predicted, a frontal, gross, and technique attack. He tried to grab her arm with both hands, a movement of those who are used to using the strength to dominate. But he was not dealing with an ordinary victim. For Maya, his attack seemed to happen in slow motion. Years of training have transformed their reactions into pure instinct. She did not retreat. She advanced toward the attack. The moment Rick's hands were about to touch her, Maya turned her hip. His left hand deflected his wrist out, using Rick's own thrust against him. At the same time, the palm of his right hand reached his elbow underneath, with a precise and calculated force. It was not a punch. It was a dry and surgical blow. A sharp crack cut the silence of the night, immediately followed by a shout of Rick acute and animalistic pain. His arm bent the wrong side of the elbow joint. The pain was instant and overwhelming. He fell to his knees, holding his arm now useless by his body, his pale face with shock and agony. Ben froze. He watched the entire scene, which did not last more than 2 seconds, with wide eyes. His brain could not sue. A moment earlier, they were the predators. Now their leader was on the floor, neutralized in a brutally efficient way. The fear he felt before turned into absolute dread. He looked at Maya, who was now standing, perfectly calm, as if she had just pushed an insect away. She wasn't even panting. She didn't look at Rick, who moaned to the floor. His eyes settled in Ben. The silent challenge was clear. And you? Are you going to try your luck too? The threat was no longer in both men. The threat, Ben realized late, it was always her. He stepped back, his hands raised in a universal gesture of surrender. He wanted nothing to do with that. He just wanted to disappear. Rick, on the other hand, was looking at Maya with a mixture of hatred and unbelief. The pain was immense, but the humiliation was worse. He had been broken, literally and figuratively, and the night was not over yet. Ben took another step back, the panic stamped on his face. Their plan did not include hospitals, broken bones, or a victim who revived the efficiency of a soldier. His mind ran, seeking a way out. Maya completely ignored the man who squirmed on the floor. His focus was on Ben. She saw him as the most unstable piece of the board, and instability could be explored or become a danger. She needed to remove it from the equation. He made his choice, said Maya, the voice cutting the cold air. You still have a chance to make yours. Enter your car and go away. Forget that tonight happened. The offer hit him with the force of a punch. Go away? Leave Rick? For a second, loyalty fought the survival instinct. Then he looked at Rick. Ben, don't stand there. Take it. Rick shouted between moans of pain, the red face of anger and humiliation. The order was delirious. Rick did not understand or refused to accept that they never had control. I won't tell you again, Maya continued, taking a slow and deliberate step towards Ben. His problem is not yours, but if you stay, he will become yours. Time pressure was a real factor. Maya knew that the loneliness of that gas station was temporary. At any time another truck could stop, the police could make a round. The situation needed to be resolved, and fast. Every second Ben hesitated increased the risk to her. Ben's decision was made. Fear won. He last looked at his partner on the floor, an expression of pity and terror on his face. I'm sorry, Rick, he said, his voice shaking. He turned and ran. It didn't look back. The sound of your steps disappearing in the darkness was followed by the noise of a car engine connecting and tires singing on the asphalt. Now it was just Maya and Rick. The silence has come back, heavier and thinner than before. Rick stopped moaning and looked up to the woman who had dismantled him. The pain in her arm was a fire, but a new feeling surpassed her, pure and concentrated hatred. Ben's escape did not scare him. She freed him. There were no more witnesses. There was no one else to judge him. With a good arm, he began to support himself to try to stand, his eyes fixed in Maya. The dynamics changed again. It was no longer a kidnapping. It was personal. Rick leaned on the wall of the gas station with a good shoulder, the sweat dripping by his forehead. The pain in his arm was a liquid fire, but his hatred was stronger. He looked at Maya, who watched him with a calm that went crazy. She thought she had won. She thought he was just a stupid brute. He was going to show her how wrong he was. You're fast, he gasped, a distorted smile forming on his lips. I have to admit it. I've never seen anything the same. He spoke slowly, every word loaded with poison. But combat melee has a limit. Maya remained silent, the tense muscles. The relaxed posture had disappeared, replaced by a readiness of combat. She knew that men like Rick, when humiliated, didn't give up. They folded the bet. Slowly, with a good hand, Rick bent down and reached his boot. Maya didn't see what he was doing until he straightened. The metallic sound that echoed in the night was unmistakable. One click. He now held a knife. The blade of about 15 centimeters shone under the weak light of the post. It was not any knife, it was a combat knife spent on use. Her initial assessment was wrong. She didn't see the gun, a mistake that could be fatal. "Let's try again," Rick said, the voice now dangerously calm. "You'll get the keys from your truck. You'll get into the cabin and take me away from here, and you'll do it without a sound." Adrenaline flooded Maya's system. This was no longer a control exercise. It was a struggle for survival. Her training covered scenarios with white weapons, but the theory was always cleaner than reality. The reality was that a knife could kill as efficiently as a bullet. Compliance was the enemy, and it had been complacent for a moment. She did not demonstrate internal change. His face remained a mask of neutrality. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. Rick smiled, a glow of triumph in his eyes. He gestured with the knife. "The keys." Slowly. Maya stuck her hand in her pocket and took the keys out of the truck. The metal was cold against your skin. She threw them to the floor, halfway through them. "Take you," she said. It was a test. A bluff. Rick's anger fought with his caution. He wanted to keep the distance, but the keys were essential. He took a hesitant step forward. The knife still pointed to her. He bent down to catch the keys, keeping his eyes fixed on her. It was the opening that Maya needed. In the second, when his eyes turned to the ground, she exploded in motion, not to attack, but to create distance. She ran, not away, but toward the back of her own truck. Rick, surprised, shouted with anger and thrown behind her, the pain in his arm, making him slower, more clumsy. The chase had begun, but Maya wasn't running away. She was changing the battlefield to a place she knew better than anyone, her own territory. Maya's decision to run to the rear of the truck was pure tactical instinct. The huge toe was a metal maze and shadows, an environment she knew perfectly. Each inch of that vehicle was an extension of its own space. For Rick, it was enemy territory. He followed her, the anger boosting him. The acute pain in his broken arm made him grind his teeth with each step. "You can't run forever," he shouted, his voice echoing between the truck tires. He surrounded the back of the trailer, the knife ready, but she was no longer there. Maya used the second advantage to open a side compartment of the chassis. His hands did not tremble as they looked in the dark, passing over chains and tools. She grabbed the object she wanted, a solid iron bar used to tighten the load straps. He weighed at least 10 pounds and was almost a meter long. It was not an elegant weapon like his knife, but it was brutally effective. When Rick appeared on the other side of the truck, hoping to find her cornered, he stopped. Maya was standing about 5 meters away, holding the iron bar with both hands. The dynamics changed once more. Now they were armed. Her vision holding the iron bar, with the same deadly calm as before, made Rick's blood boil. The persecution stopped. They stared at themselves in the weak light, slowly circulating each other as gladiators. Rick's pain, adrenaline and hatred made him reckless. He saw the situation as a direct struggle. Maya, on the other hand, saw the environment. She knew where each chain hung, where the floor was oily, where she could use her own truck like a weapon or a shield. His mistake was to think that the fight was only between the two. His mistake was to forget that she was at home. Rick's hesitation lasted only a second. Driven by fury, he advanced, the knife in a deadly arc. He was faster than Maya expected, even with one arm less. He had the slowness of her iron bar. But Maya didn't use the bar like a club. She used it as a spear. When Rick entered her range, she did not balance the bar. She designed her forward with the strength of her whole body. The massive iron tip hit Rick's chest. It was not a piercing blow, but the pure and gross impact made him lose his air. The breath came out of his lungs in a painful silvo. He staggered back, the attack with the knife falling into the air. Maya didn't give her time to recover. This was no longer an exercise of containment. It was the application of overwhelming force to neutralize a lethal threat. She advanced, turning the iron bar horizontally. The target was not Rick, but his knees. The blow was accurate, brutal, and functional. The metal sound hitting bone was dry and sick. Rick shouted, a different sound from the first. It wasn't just pain, it was despair. His legs gave way and he fell to the asphalt floor, the knife escaping his hand and sliding away in the darkness. He was broken. The arm, the legs, the ego, all. Maya stopped above him, her breath firmly, her chest rising and rhythmically down. The The adrenaline was still pulsed, but his mind was clear. She looked at the man on the floor, not hatred, but for a cold purpose. It was a threat that needed to be contained permanently. Her growth that night was not learning to fight. He went to accept how far she needed to go to survive. She didn't hesitate. She did not question the brutality of her actions. She did what was needed. The ordinary trucker would have become a statistic. The soldier assured that the only one not to walk that post would be the aggressor. The following silence was filled only by Rick's low moans. The fight was over, but the situation was not resolved. Leaving a wounded man behind was a risk. Calling the police would bring questions that Maya didn't want to answer, delays she couldn't allow, and a system she didn't trust to do justice. She learned from the army that an unnatural threat is a threat that returns. With the iron bar still in one hand, she approached. Rick watched her from the ground, her hatred in her eyes finally replaced by something she recognized well, pure fear. He was a predator who had become the prey. Maya didn't say a word. First, she walked calmly and picked up his knife on the floor. He examined the blade for a second and kept it in his belt. Then he took the keys from the truck he had tried to steal. With the scene under her control, she crouched alongside Rick. He cringed, waiting for another blow. Instead, she began to review his pockets. Rick tried to resist, but Maya's look was enough to paralyze him. From his pocket, she took a wallet and a cell phone. Ignored the wallet. It was the cell phone that interested him. Using Rick's thumb, which was conscious but too shocked to fight, she unlocked the device. What she found in the photo gallery frozen her blood. They were not pictures of family or friends. They were videos. Short, secretly filmed videos of other women in other gas stations. Women alone, vulnerable, unconscious of which they were being observed, catalogued. The most recent video was hers, filmed minutes before the attack. She was not the first. She was just the first to retaliate. The tension in the air has changed. It was no longer about survival, it was about something else. Maya got up, Rick's cell phone in hand. She looked at the dark highway, and then to the broken man on the floor. The decision was made. The police would not be called. Revenge would have a different way. Maya looked at the contact list on Rick's cell phone. Mother, Ben, the partner who fled, wife. There were dozens of names. Dozens of people who knew a version of Rick that was not the real one. She was going to correct that. What are you going to do? Rick stammered from the ground, the evident panic in his voice. Maya didn't answer. She opened the video he had recorded from her, then sailed to the gallery and selected all the other videos of women he had filmed. With some touches, she created a message. The text was simple. This is the man you know. This is who he really is. She attached the videos. Then she started the process. The first recipient was wife. The message was sent. The second was mother. Submitted. The third was Ben. Submitted. She continued, metadiacally, sending Rick's crimes test to each person on their contact list. Friends, co-workers, family members. One by one. Rick watched, powerless, the destruction of his life happening on the screen of his own cell phone. No, please, no, he begged, the tears now mixed with sweat and dirt on his face. My family, my work. Maya ignored him, continuing the process with a cold concentration. For her it was not cruelty, it was balance. He used technology to turn women into targets, into secret trophies. She was using the same technology to expose him, to make sure he could never hide behind a normal facade. Her justice would not be a long and uncertain judicial process. It would be social, immediate, and absolute. When she sent the message to the last contact on the list, she approached Rick. She threw her cell phone into his chest. "Your phone will not stop playing," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Each of these people now know what you are. No prison would be worse than living with it." She turned, leaving him amid the wreckage of her own life. With the sound of the first notification starting to reach her cell phone, the revenge was complete. Maya didn't look back. The sound of Rick's cell phone, vibrating and playing non-stop on the floor, was the soundtrack of his departure. She walked firmly to the cabin of her truck, the iron bar in one hand, his knife still in his belt. She kept the bar in her proper place, a practiced and routine movement. He climbed into the cabin, the family atmosphere welcoming her. For a moment she was sitting in the dark, the engine off. The silence inside the truck was a stark contrast to the chaos she had just created in a man's life. There was no triumph on his face, no anger, just a calm exhaustion, the adrenaline finally starting to give in. She looked at the knife she had put on the panel. He took it and with a cloth carefully cleaned his fingerprints from the blade and the cable. He opened the window and hurled it away in the darkness of the bush beside the road, where he would probably never be found. She called the engine. The powerful snoring of diesel was a comforting sound, the promise of distance and movement. She adjusted the mirrors. In the reflection, he could see Rick's pathetic figure, a dark spot on the illuminated asphalt, still in the same place. He didn't move. Maya engaged the march and accelerated softly, pulling the huge vehicle back to the highway. She did not accelerate to escape. She simply resumed her journey. The gas station and the man she broke disappeared in the rearview mirror. For the rest of the world, it was just another truck following its way at night. For Maya, it was the end of an unplanned job. The threat was identified, confronted, and neutralized. The mission was accomplished. 3 months later, Maya was standing at a roadside coffee hundreds miles away. As she had her coffee, she heard the conversation of 2 other truckers at the next table. They talked about a story that became a small local scandal in some city, whose name she didn't mind keeping. They spoke of a businessman, a community pillar whose life collapsed in a single night. Videos of him harassing women were sent from their own mobile phone to their entire contact list. The wife left him, the company fired him, and his friends turned his back on him. He lost everything. One of the truckers laughed and said, "They say he blamed a hacker, but everyone knows the truth." Such a trash had what it deserved. Maya took a sip to her coffee, the inexpressive face. She felt no satisfaction or guilt. He only felt a silent confirmation that the universe sometimes needs a push to find balance. She briefly wondered about Ben, the partner who fled. Maybe he learned the lesson, maybe not. It was no longer her problem. She finished coffee, left a generous tip on the table, and left. The morning sun was strong. She climbed the cabin of her truck, the engine snoring like a loyal beast. His hands held the wheel, the same hands that had broken a man and destroyed his life with some touches on a screen. It was the same hands that now took her safely to her next destination. She was not a justice, it was a survivor. And in the vast and lonely extension of the highways, she knew there were others like Rick out there. The difference is that for anyone who crossed his way, she would be ready. The road continued, and so is it. Always ahead. Maya's justice was brutal, but for many necessary. She didn't wait for a system that could fail. She created her own end for the story. What did you think of her attitude? Was it too far away, or was the exact measure that the situation asked for? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you watched here, comment, "I watched the end, so I know who the real fans of an impact story are." Your support is what moves us. Stories like this remind us that heroes and villains do not always wear covers or masks. Sometimes they are just trying to reach their destination. If you want to keep exploring powerful narratives that challenge our perceptions, click one of the videos that are now appearing on the final screen. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. You will not want to lose what comes next.